New South Wales Labor wants developers and real estate agents banned from holding a position on local council. The local government amendment disqualification from civic office bill passed through the Legislative Council yesterday. That doesn't make it law. It still has to get through the Liberal and National Party-dominated lower house, so we'll keep a close eye on that. The bill aims to remove the conflicts of interest faced by developers and estate agents serving on council and to ensure a community's best interests at the forefront of a council decision-making process. Mark Buttigieg is a Labor MLC and Upper House Whip. He's a big supporter of this bill and joins me now. Mark Buttigieg, good afternoon. Thanks for coming on.
G'day, Paul. How are you, mate?
Yeah, good. Is there a distinction between, in ideological terms, between a developer at one end of the spectrum and an environmental activist at the other? Can they, in both cases, be driven by their ideology?
Well, ideology and philosophy and belief is one thing, okay, and the democratic process allows people to make a decision, an objective decision based on those philosophies. So everyone knows what the Greens stand for, everyone knows what Labor stands for, everyone knows what Liberal stands for. It's part of your ideology and your philosophy, and it's one of the reasons you stand with that party brand, right? But we're talking about now a totally different thing, and that is a direct conflict by virtue of potential monetary gain. And that's where developers and real estates come into the picture, because they have an obvious interest, a conflict of interest between the information that they're privy to as councillors, that is sensitive information about planning decisions that the average person in the electorate, in the local government area, has no idea of or no access to, and yet they're making decisions and have privy to this information, which they can then use to benefit themselves economically. So it's just too much of an obvious conflict. And I think the problem, Paul, is with the whole declaration of conflict, we've seen that it simply doesn't work. So I'm not sure if listeners have been following it, but the emblematic case, if you like, has been the Mayor of Strathfield, Anton Duarte, who falsified his declaration form and then was found to have done that by NCAT, the Office of Local Government investigated him, and then NCAT found him guilty. But the investigation took so long, he still hasn't been punished for it. They found him guilty. 2.5 years, all the while he's sitting on council as mayor, making decisions while an associated company is buying up options in the area. So the point is, Paul, this is the current legislation and declaration system simply doesn't work, just fails people of New South Wales to have a transparent, open system.
Now, I've sat on council, and frequently at Newcastle City Council and at Lake Macquarie Council, councillors have excused themselves from debate and voting in regard to development applications for, a variety of reasons, some that I would have considered to be relatively innocuous. But you say it doesn't work? How frequently does the system fail?
Look, I was on council too, and look, by and large, most councillors do the right thing and are actually quite conservative about this stuff. So as you point out, for what seems like a fairly innocuous conflict, they'll exempt themselves from the meeting just to make sure. But there is a minority of people who want to game the system, and if the system isn't picking up that conflict, in other words, if you don't declare it, fill out your form properly, and you want to game the system as happened in Strathfield and as looks like it's happening up here in Lake Macquarie, and there's a few other...
Well, there's been no suggestion of impropriety at Lake Macquarie, of course. There's nothing wrong, as we've discovered through our investigations over the last couple of days, nominating for two separate council areas, or is there a problem at this stage with being a property developer, is there?
No, well, this is the whole point, right? It's actually legal. So it's actually legal to nominate if you're a property developer or a real estate agent and to go on council and then be privy to those decision processes. Now, if the conflict of interest system was working properly, we would never have had the situation of Strathfield where a mayor can actively sit on council, have been found to wrongly declared, and then potentially profiting from zoning uplifts. So, our party, the Labor Party, has banned anyone nominating from for local council since 2016. We've had that in place. So you simply can't nominate if you're a developer or a real estate agent. And we're seeking to align the law with what our party practices. So, and I think the most people I talk to be honest, Paul, reactions I've had on social media and interactions with the everyday person, they actually can't believe this happens. They can't believe that you're allowed to. It's just so intuitively easy for people to understand that it's an obvious conflict that should be taken out at its source. And look, developers and real estate agents have got a contribution to make because often they're familiar with planning systems and good design and all the rest. But they can participate just like any other citizen. They can go to council meetings, they can air their views, they can put in submissions, but they shouldn't be able to be in a position of power and use private information which they're privy to influence their own economic gain. It's fairly straightforward reform, and I just don't understand why the government's resisting so hard on this.
Mark Buttigieg, I appreciate your insight. Thank you.
Thanks for your time, Paul. Really appreciate it.
Labor MLC Mark Buttigieg, who's a supporter of legislation that's got through the upper house of the state parliament, banning developers and real estate agents. But, of course, that doesn't make it law. It's got to get through the lower house, where the Liberal Party and the Nationals, of course, will hold sway.